Good evening and welcome to this higher education evening from BHASVIC for A2 parents for information and support. I am Mark Monaghan, Assistant Principal for Digital and Comms. You won't hear from me much tonight because I'll hand over to my very able colleagues, Vicky and Nikki, who will talk to you about the ongoing process for support with UCAS and the kind of next steps about what will happen for your young person. So I'm here basically for a little bit of admin. So the few things you need to know. So obviously we're live on YouTube, so you can make comments on the YouTube chat, and those will come through to our team. You may find when you click on it, you just need to sign in with a Google or a YouTube account. But those comments will come through to us. And what our team will do for most of it is they will monitor those and they will kind of collect them together for us to go through at the end. And if there are specific questions, you'll find later in the description for this video, there is the he@basvic.ac.uk email address where you can actually contact the team if you've got specific requests and questions about your young person and the kind of questions you might have about their next steps for going to university. So without further ado, I'm going to get Nikki up to have a chat with us. So good evening, Nikki. I'm just going to get your presentation up. Thanks for joining us. I'll get out your way. Nikki will now talk you all through the next steps for UCAS.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark. I'm Nikki. I look after the UCAS pathway higher education at BHASVIC. I have the good fortune to actually, because it's a real treat of a job, which I've been doing for around about 8-9 years. It means it's a very cross-college role. I deal with current students, ex-students, teachers, tutors, and there's always something to learn every year. And thank you for checking in and listening. Thank you on behalf of your young person. If they forget to tell you thank you, then I'm saying thank you, because all the information and stats says that all your support at home is really vital in their decision making. So thank you for checking in. No need to take any notes. We've got a parent and carers dashboard. There's a higher education button. There's a help guide, which I've recently updated. We have updates in the parent and carers newsletters, and there's also the email contact. I think this presentation can throw up slightly more complex issues, so please do email if you need to, and I'll endeavour to get back as quickly as I can. So what we will cover, I have to say the first year A1 stuff is the more fun stuff. This is a little drier, but it is very, very essential information. So UCAS track and contacting universities and offers, and firming and insuring will cover. What to do if they decide if they want a gap year. A little bit about UCAS Extra and options if students decide to change courses entirely, which they do occasionally. What happens if things go wrong or personal circumstances change from now until they go to university? I will talk about student finance, disabled student allowance and accommodation, and then I will hand over to my colleague Vicky, who will talk about how students are supported by universities. So first off, offers, and many of your students will have had offers already, but they can come as late as May, which can be a little frustrating, but UCAS asks universities to get out all their decisions, and it's May the 16th this year. Students need to respond by June the 6th. They have a good deal of time, and actually it's a good opportunity. Open days are still going on. If they want to go and visit a university again just to make sure their final decision is the right one, then they do have the time to do that. They cannot do anything until all universities have replied. Some are brilliant and will reply fairly quickly. Some will take their time. And I know a few universities take almost right up until the May the 16th deadline. So contacting universities, it can be a bit frustrating, the wait, but we generally do suggest to students not to pester unis. They do things at their own pace. It won't hurry up an application at all. They may have a friend who's had an offer from the English department. They've applied to maths. It's a different department in the same university. It may take longer. There's not really a rhyme or reason not to feel universities aren't interested, because they probably are. They just know they have until that May deadline to do things. But if there's any new information, I will talk about this a bit later, then they must contact the universities. And if they've dropped a subject or anything significant that they need to know, please contact those universities. Any personal details like change of address can be managed through the UCAS hub where they've done their application. So different types of offers. So a conditional offer is where a university will say 3B grades and then or 3C grades, and that will be the condition offer. The condition is they get those grades on results day. So assuming everything goes well and that they meet the grades or do better, then they have a place at university. If they're unsuccessful in their offer, that's a knockback. But there is a reason why there are 5 choices, and they may well have met the entry requirements, but perhaps that university course have just been super competitive with lots of applicants this year. Most universities will have a cap on numbers somewhere along the line. Unconditional offer, I will talk about in a minute. So those are the 3 different types of offers your students will have received. So unconditional offers are great. They usually depend on the student finishing their level 3 A-level course, but they do take the pressure off somewhat. However, we do say to students their A-level and BTEC results will last a long time in their life and to do keep working hard regardless. But it can be tempting to take up an unconditional offer, but not to rush and really review and really look at, actually, they give me an unconditional offer. That might not be the right university to me, but it's very nice to have them. So do weigh it up, talk to teachers, talk to our careers advisors, go again on an open day and just double check that unconditional offer, although it looks fantastic, just double check it's where they would want to go. So do many applicants receive unconditional offers? I think about 14% of our students last year received at least one unconditional. But it's really important to note, lots of universities don't make any unconditional offers at all. Lots of them, if they have 5 choices and none of them are unconditional, because they are popular with particular universities and indeed particular courses. Creative courses, arts courses, business, languages, which are a bit less competitive, should we say, are likely to give those unconditional offers. So finalising firm and insurance places. So this is where students will rank their choices. So if they have 5 offers, which will be they will make a firm offer. So they will say, yep, I think my exams are going to do well. I am going to accept that. I'm going to set that offer as a firm offer. That's where I definitely want to go. And they can make a second insurance choice. Now, normally, we do say this is where perhaps you have a little wobble and there's slightly low entry requirements. But actually, I know lots of students who will do the same entry requirements because simply there are other choices they don't really want to go to. It's really important to say that actually, number one, they don't have to make an insurance offer, and it should be somewhere they still want to go. Don't make an insurance offer if you don't want to go there, because if you don't get your firm offer and your grades or results day, you will automatically get your insurance. And withdrawing it and going into clearing is a bit of a faff. So they don't need to do an insurance offer, but it is a good idea.
Okay, I'm aware we're having a bit of an issue with the audio. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to stop over to Vicky for a moment, who's going to pick up on her part, and then we will come back to Nikki, if that's okay. So just give us a second. So Vicky, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you all fine and nice and clear.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can get Nikki. So if you give us a second, here we go. So you're up and you're ready. Take it away and we'll see if we can get Nikki.
Okay, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about the support and guidance that you can expect at a university. I'm the head of guidance here, and I previously worked at the University of Brighton in their student outreach and support. So hopefully I've got a bit of an insight to be able to offer you about what that looks like and what student support looks like at university. So you're a young person is obviously looking to fly the nest, and I know that that can be just as difficult for you as parents as it is for them as students. So we're going to, in this presentation, think a little bit how we can send them off with the best possible information. So we're going to talk a little bit about healthy living. We're going to talk about independent living in halls of residence. We're going to look a little bit at finance. Nikki will talk about that in more detail in terms of student finance and that part of the process. I'm going to look at the other types of finance that is available to students, including disability student allowance. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what student support might look like at university, if there's any disclosures that happen whilst at university, either academically or outside of the classroom, and generally how to seek and access support. It is worth remembering that when your young person goes to university, they are 18 and legally adults, so that universities won't be able to talk to you about things that are going on at college. So that I guess those apron strings are well and truly broken. Well, at least I guess educationally, financially, probably a little longer they'll be tied to you. So I'm going to talk particularly, I guess, to the young people who may be on the presentation, and that will be so obviously useful to parents. So we're going to start with what it looks like to kind of take care of yourself, I guess, at university. So first things first, I guess, is to register with a GP. So that's really important because that gives you swift access to the local services. Also, vaccinations, you might be able to access those if you don't do those before you go to universities. And I would recommend kind of thinking about that, actually. So, for example, there's lots of young people coming together from all over the country. So things like meningitis can appear sometimes. So there are vaccinations against that, the MRI, the HVP, and maybe even COVID, so think about some of those vaccinations before you go, or first thing when you arrive at university once you've signed into a local GP. Lots of big universities have GP surgeries on site, and if not, the local GPs around student areas will be really familiar with helping young people and the kind of things that young people from university access to. So a part of, obviously, we've said we looked at a bit physical kind of in signing up with GP. That includes a dentist, but also for a young person going to university, understanding where those sexual health clinics are and maybe being prepared in terms of contraception. I know parents, you might not want to hear this, but it's really good to be prepared. There's lots of support at university, and that's set up very differently in different types of university. My previous experience in Brighton, there were student support and guidance tutors, but there's always a student services. There's always kind of self-help there as well. But also, I think getting yourself involved in what's going on, particularly in those early weeks. There's always induction at university that will tell you about where all of these things are across the campuses and across the college setup. But also Freshers Week is going to be one of those times of university that gives you an opportunity to really start to embed yourself and get yourself involved in university life. It's a good chance to kind of see what's out there, so to help you make friends and kind of think about where you can kind of fit in this part of university. Freshers Week is fantastic also because you'll obviously get lots of banks there, and you'll get lots of kind of local service areas. So it's a good way to kind of figure out what's going on for you in the city as a student. So taking your care of yourself, we talked a little bit, I said, about GPs, but most universities will also offer mental health support. So lots of students lots of universities have free online services where you can kind of get access to supervised trained counsellors, or you can book counselling through the student services. There's also lots of free self-help stuff online and in workshops and stuff like that. Obviously, most students are going to be looking to go and stay at a university, and student flats and halls of residence. Lots of universities actually link students before they get to their flat. So you might actually have the opportunity to have a WhatsApp group with those students before you turn up. If not, then I recommend any student to set one up. A good way is also to kind of ingratiate yourself in that flat is to keep your door open, I guess, in those first few weeks. So that makes it nice and easy for people to come in and talk to you, but also maybe hang out in the kitchen. So if you do have a young person who's feeling particularly homesick and isolated, those are really good tips for them. And if you're a student, then get yourself involved, really. That Freshers Week, as I said earlier, there'll be lots of societies there. Sign up to everything, try everything. If you like it, stay. If not, you don't have to carry that on. It's also just really a good way to build friendships and start to find, as I like to say, your tribe, as it were. Also, I think about kind of preparing your young person to kind of live and healthfully when they're at university. If you could send them away with 5 good recipes of food that is healthy and cheap, then that also kind of helps them with the transition of looking after themselves at halls. If there's ever a problem in your flats, then student support and student services are really good for helping you do that. Also, I would say that in most halls of residence, there is usually a worker who is employed by the university who is there overnight. So they're there to help deal with any emergencies that might happen in halls. So as I said, Nick is going to talk primarily about student finance. I'm going to talk about a little bit briefly about some of those other types of finance that are available to you. So there's the disability student allowance. Okay, so that is for those people who've got registered disability or a long-term health condition or a mental health condition. But that disability student allowance is on need rather than income. So for example, if you've got dyslexia, then it might be that you need a particular program for your computer, and the disability student allowance will kind of help pay for that. So, or if you've a wheelchair user, for example, and you need access or travel arrangements, then the disability students allowance is to kind of level the playing field and help you access that. Students will have declared some of that on the UCAS forms prior to them arriving. There are some other types of finance available to students in the forms of scholarships, bursaries, and grants. They all have a different kind of access, I guess. So scholarships, for example, are usually based on achievement and some kind of excellence or in performance. So that could be academically, that could be, for example, you could be a national sports person or be excel in music. And those scholarships are in some way as a reward for that, or they are in some way to help you kind of pursue that activities. Universities do like young people with talent in that area. So sometimes they can also come in the form of money off, for example, of accommodation. So they can be in that way as well. Bursaries are slightly different. The bursaries are for kind of living costs, and they tend to be given to students from low household incomes and are based on personal circumstances. They could also be for disabled students or what we call widening participation students, where so if you come from a particular area where not a lot of people go to university, that could make you a widening participation student, and that could make you eligible for bursary. Similarly, if you're the first in your generation to go to university, they're provided by the university and also alumni, and they are there to help you be successful at university. Grants are a third stream of avenue that you might have access to, but again, it would depend on personal circumstances. They're often given again to low household income and to help with living costs, but they are not necessarily given out by the university, and they can be given out by charities or trusts. So to find those, you have to do a little bit more research. And the Scholarship Hub is a really good way of looking for that. They outline lots of different kind of potential avenues for scholarships. or grants. The slide on just is really reiterating the fact that lots of students are able to access bursaries, but don't know necessarily that it exists. So you do need to do a little bit of research in that area. At this point, just given that I used to work at university, I'd always recommend students to look to see if there is work at the university too. There are always student ambassador roles. There's already catering staff, for example, library staff. They often employ, and they're a really good employer, universities, because they understand that your studying comes first. And that's really just on the screen to just reiterate the fact that there's lots of extra money available for students. So really do your research beyond that of student finance to see if there's anything that you're entitled to. And I'm going to touch on additional learning support now. So if you've got additional learning support at college, then it's likely that that will continue at university. If in doubt, then speak to your personal academic tutor or student services team. If an additional learning need it materializes when you're at university, and I'll give you a personal example. I took a dyslexia for me was diagnosed when I did postgraduate. They do have access to educational psychologists, and they can refer you to that if you feel like there is a learning need that's not been identified prior to that, because some learning needs actually become more prevalent the more you advance, I guess, in education. So if you feel that that's the issue, talk to a personal tutor who can then kind of refer you to and signpost you to the right people for support. So if things go wrong, there are academic issues, if you've decided to defer or leave, then I really would encourage you to speak to the people at the university before making any rash decisions. There are things that universities can do. They can transfer courses. They can have flexibility. So please do talk to them if there is an issue. If that can be a complaint, for example, then there are systems in place at university for you to kind of process those complaints. Student services is good for signposting that way. Also, if it's something beyond curriculum, but there are dedicated on-campus police officers. But the student union is also a really good place to go to at university, because they have a much bigger profile at that level than perhaps they do at college, for example. They have employed people working with them to voice and kind of those opinions of students. So if there's something on the course that you're not happy with, then the Students' Union can often help, because they are talking to those administrators at a much higher level. So access and support. So pretty similar to college, I guess. There's lots of stuff available to you to self-help. But support at university, given your adult status, is self-driven. So there is lots of advice on the university websites. You have those academic tutors, you have student support tutors, you have student wellbeing services. All of those people are there to help and support you. Just a reminder, I guess, that, as I said previously, parents, university won't talk to you about your young person because they can't disclose any specific circumstances due to data protection. So just be aware of that. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. Hopefully we can get Nikki back now to kind of continue where she is. We'll hover around also afterwards to answer any questions that you've got. So hopefully we've got Nikki back on track, Mark.
Thank you, Vicky. Let's see if we can get Nikki. Nikki, welcome.
I think so.
There you go. Nice and clear.
Thank you.
I think the office got flooded with water. You sounded like you were under the sea.
Oh no!
Thank you for everyone who's been watching.
I had the lead in the wrong plug, Mark. I'll confess. Nigel thankfully fixed it. So
great. So we're going to kick off from where you were. So you were just talking through some of those things about the kind of finalising firm and insurance places. So I'm going to hand back over to you, Nikki. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark. So thinking about finalising firm and insurance places. So firm offer is when everything goes well, the grades are achieved on results day, and then Oh no, so firm offer will be what students decide. This is how they rank their choices. So 5 choices, all given offers, they will decide one that, yes, that's the university I want to go to. So assuming all goes well on results day and they meet the grade conditions, they will have a place at that university. Insurance choices, they don't need to put an insurance choice. It should have lower entry requirements, but honestly, don't put an insurance choice that you don't want to go, and you don't have to put one at all. So sometimes it will be the same grades, which isn't ideal, but maybe, you know, it's worth trying on results day to get into the insurance choice. So how do they firm an insure an offer? And I'd really suggest students do this on a laptop and not their phone. I think do it safely, because it's a really important part of the process, needs to be done correctly. They do it via the UCAS hub where they've done their application, and they will use UCAS track. So they can, if they have an unconditional offer, they can firmly accept that, and all other offers disappear. They have a place at that university, which is great. Most likely, they'll firmly accept a conditional offer, which will be, you need 3 Bs, as a first choice, and make an insurance choice of another conditional offer, which will also require grades. If they do an unconditional first, they don't need to put an insurance because they have a place, but they can do an unconditional as an insurance place. But really, I can't stress enough, do it carefully, because once they have firmed and insure, they cannot go back. All the other offers disappear, and they will offer places to other students. So they will only keep a firm and insure. So that's how they're ranking their decisions and making their decision. So if students change their minds, and this is not uncommon, and I think every year students will have applied to a course and then change their mind before results day. I always say, if they it's the same university, different course, just contact the university. They're often quite amenable and quite understanding that students sometimes change their minds on the courses they actually want to go to. They don't need to do an extra personal statement, but if they can fit them into another course, they'll do it. I'll go on to something called UCAS Extra, which is open now in a minute. Adjustment is on results day. They've done much better than expected. They might try other universities and see if they've still got places available. A very, very small percentage of students will go through that, but it is available as a process. And of course, clearing if they don't achieve their firm and insurance on results day. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So there are lots of different opportunities within the UCAS cycle to change your mind and do something different. So UCAS Extra is open now, and basically it's where universities list any courses that are still available. So on the January deadline, they are guaranteed to consider. They are not now. It's past the January deadline, but this lists lots of courses still available on UCAS that students could still be offered a place at. You have to hold no offers. So you can withdraw any offers, you can cancel any choices, but if you're unsuccessful, you decline and you're not holding any offers, then UCAS Extra might be for you. And this is a screenshot I did a couple of days ago, actually. And just an example, over 130 providers, 130 universities still offering courses in English, 1,819 courses still available. I sat with a student today looking at nursing, and there was a huge number of nursing courses still available. So there still is lots of courses out there. If your young person is a little bit wobbly on their course, I'm really happy to sit in my office and show them UCAS Extra and do a search with them. So add an extra choice will become available on track, but as I say, this is like can't hold any offers, so they have to withdraw and everything. Do they need to pay any additional money? No, it's free. It's included in they've already paid their £27.50. But extra just gives you this extra chance, I suppose, to have a look and apply for a university choice. How it works is they will go through one choice at a time. That university has a limited time, I think about 10 days to get back to them, and they will go through those choices. But it's a good option if they've really changed their mind. But I can't stress enough, same uni, slightly different course, just contact the uni, who are often very amenable. Just a note on special circumstances and extenuating personal circumstances. So special circumstances might be something that happens through the exam period. Every year we have something happens to students. They have an injury, they have a car accident, sadly bereavement. This is it has to be something quite impactful, but we can provide evidence to the exam boards of their circumstances. It can't be a long-standing condition. It's got to be something that happens in that exam period that really risks their sort of showing themselves their best academic ability. And we send it off to the exam boards. The exam boards decide, and it's only ever up to 5% in the most extreme circumstances. And we don't know whether they've granted it or not, but we can give that evidence if needed. Oh, can you go back one, Mark? Extenuating personal circumstances. It's just, we have, the way the references has changed this year, we have added extenuating personal circumstances onto UCAS references already in conjunction with students. But if something happens around now and right up until results day, we can contact universities on behalf of students if we need to. So, and again, it does need to be something impactful, but universities should know if there's difficult things going on for any young person. Vicky's mentioned all the brilliant support services at universities. They're really excellent, and hopefully they will take things into account. It may well not reduce grades, but it will ensure support is there waiting when your student goes to university. Deferring entry. So this is where students might have applied for this autumn, and then they suddenly change their mind and think, actually, I'd like to take a gap year instead. Not uncommon at all. But a deferred entry means you have a place at university. You can not worry about it in your gap year, but you deferred. So all students need to do is contact universities and ask them. They have no, they can say no, and they do sometimes. If the course is changing, they know significantly next year, but usually they're quite good, actually, universities, and they're quite happy to defer. I always think the sooner, once a student is sure they want to take a gap year, contact the unis nice and early. It means unis can offer places to other students. We do keep a list of deferred entry students, and we do keep in touch with students in the gap year to send them student finance details and all sorts of bits and bobs. Widening participation. I think about 56% of our students are widening participation, may well have got contextual offers. And just to flag up, Newcastle, Leeds, Surrey and Sussex, which are certainly 4 universities that they may well need to do something a little bit extra, and just to keep an eye on it. Bristol and Plymouth offer contextual offers to all our students, don't need to do anything. Newcastle, it's an online login. Leeds and Surrey are forms. So just to double check to get those contextual offers. I'm going to start on student finance now, which is quite complex. So apologies in advance, but hopefully I'll simplify it as much as possible. It is a very complex area. So summary, students will get financial support from the government to help with the costs of higher education. Repayments depend on income and are only made after students earn above a certain amount. Any outstanding loan amount is written off after 40 years, even if you haven't paid it all off. And there is additional support. And Vicky has mentioned bursaries and scholarships and grants from universities. It's really worth exploring. There is a video bite size on the Welcome to UCAS Pathway page, which does explain how they might look at any kind of bursaries and find out. And there's some good documents that list bursaries as well. So student loans, two types of finance. The first one is a tuition fee loan. The second one is the maintenance loan. It's not like a normal bank loan. It doesn't show up on mortgage checks, credit checks, or anything like that. They will apply in the year they are going to university. So if they've deferred their entry, they might not apply next year. This year, we are covering it in tutorial as we speak. So students should sign up and start the student loan process, but I'll give a bit more information about that in a minute. It only kicks in, if they decide not to go, nothing happens. It only kicks in when they enroll at university. So if they change their mind, decide they don't want to go to uni, if they don't enroll at uni, nothing will happen with it basically. So a pre-approved fee cap provider is at most universities or colleges. I haven't come across one actually that isn't an approved fee cap providers. Most will charge the £9,250 per year for a full-time course, and that's capped. All students are eligible for the tuition fee loan. It's not based on household income. All students are eligible for that loan if it's a first degree. Sometimes actually if it's a second degree, if it's in a nursing or a skill shortage area. You'll be very pleased to know that students aren't given the £9,250. It does go to directly to the university or college, and it's done through the local authority actually. So it'll be Brighton and Hove, East or West Sussex, and they recoup the money back from the government. So how it works. So when students sign up, and they sometimes do ask this, but they just put a course and the uni they're most likely to go to. Obviously, nothing is decided until results day. So just put the most likely option. It will be sorted out with the university later on, but the main thing is their application is in the system. And they pay it to the university in 3 instalments per year. And there's the link to student finance. I think Mark's put all the links in the YouTube channel. And yes, they apply in the year they're intending to start uni. So if it's a gap year, it'll be next year. So the maintenance loan goes towards living costs. The amount depends on household income and circumstances and where you live and study. So there may be additional long course loans for certain full-time courses, including medicine, vet med, dentistry. So check that out. And once they've applied for the loan, it's paid into a student's bank account in 3 instalments at the start of each term. It's worth noting that it is a bit front-loaded in term 1 because students might buy an annual travel card, they might need books for the course, so there's all sorts of expenses that will be a bit front-loaded in that first term. I've been asked before about child trust funds. They're usually exempt. But it is about budgeting and being smart about spending for students. So an example, so if your household income, it is dependent on household income, is 25,000. If a student is living at home, they will get 8,610. If they're living at university elsewhere in the UK, that's 10,227, and living in London, 13,348. It is a sliding scale, so you go up to 45,000 and it drops down to 5,716 for living at home. Elsewhere is 7,304. And in London, 10,377. So there is a large assumption that from the government that parent and carers will support students at university. It's a really tough one because having had my kids at uni myself, you do know that it's not based on outgoings. And 45,000 is not a great deal, and we all know the cost of living. So it's a tough one. The gap is accommodation. Because accommodation around the country is round about 6,000–7,000. So once you get up to 40,000 household income, which with 2 adults living in the house, or two parent carers living in a house, or a parent and a partner, then actually it doesn't even cover accommodation costs. So it's a tough one. I would note, actually, I always think if those students live at home, and plenty of our students do go locally to Brighton, Sussex, and even travel to Chichester from home, the gap's sort of 1,500 from living at home to living elsewhere and paying accommodation. So I can only assume they expect students to pay quite a lot to parent and carers, but it is a significant gap between living at home and living elsewhere. So it's a tough one. Projected weekly income, and I appreciate that's a little bit faint, but from 25,000 household income, it could be 262, but going up to the upper limit, it's 110 for household income around 62,249. So it's a real difference. There are lots of very, very useful student loan calculators online, which are really excellent. Thoroughly recommend them to have a look. And it is probably the time where having those really honest discussions with your young person who wants to go to uni about how much you feel able to contribute. They can get a job, they can supplement their income, which many of them do whilst at uni, but having those honest discussions is really essential, I would say. Typical weekly outgoings, rent will be the key. And when we talk about cost of living across the UK, obviously Brighton is a very expensive place to rent, but there will be places across the UK where second and third year accommodation in rented student accommodation is likely to be a lot cheaper. And it does stretch that student loan a lot further, as does food, entertainment costs, all those different things. But there will be lots of costs that are fairly standard wherever you go to university. Things like phone, utilities, laundry needs to be considered, study materials. So those outgoings, and it's really worth starting to have conversations and talk to your young person about what their spending habits might be. Worth noting that there are learning support funds, so please investigate. It does change year on year. If they are doing particular subjects in healthcare, particularly nursing, podiatry, there's a real skill shortage. And there can be bursaries and funds to support in training grants. And grants are where they're not expected to pay back money. Also paramedic science, free uniforms, occupational health checks, occupational therapy, part-time funding, social work bursaries. So please do investigate. I think universities will generally be quite proactive in telling students there's bursaries available if they are. So I'm going to go on to repaying the loan, which students do panic about, but hopefully you'll see it's quite manageable. So repaying the tuition fee loan and the maintenance loan are combined, and students will only need to start paying repayments from the April after they've left their course, and if they're earning above a certain level, it's around about £25,000 a year. I will say now, if I forget to say later, and Vicky did touch on this as well, if a student decides that a course is not for them or university is not for them, do have those discussions with student services, because actually it does make a difference when you leave as to how much loan you will have to pay back something, but do have those discussions. You only ever repay a percentage of what you earn above the repayment threshold. So you can always earn £25,000 and never pay back any student loan. It's a bit like the personal tax allowance. So it's that threshold, and they are taken direct from salary for most people. Repayments, not very clear, apologies, but £25,000, no repayments. If you go up to £33,000, it will be £60 a month salary. 45,000, it'll be £150 a month, and earning 50,000, which would be quite good money if you ask me, is paying back 187 a month. So actually I feel it's quite manageable. They will be doing it a long time. but it's manageable. Loan interest, there is some loan interest when on the loan, and I'm afraid I'm no loan expert. There's a money saving expert with Martin Lewis explains the loan interest much better than I can. So if you're particularly interested in that, please check out Martin Lewis, money saving expert. So what if earnings go below 25,000? They pause the repayments. If you stop work, repayments pause. And if it's not paid off after 40 years, then it's written off. So enrolling in person is how you receive your funding, and we do really encourage students to sign up before the May deadline so they get their funding on time, and it will be transferred to the bank account. It can take a week or two, so it's really worth having a little bit of money to tide you over when you start at uni, just so you can hang on for that student loan. And it's 3 times a year, paid in termly instalments. 5 budgeting tips. Put away money for essentials, meal planning, learn to cook, and we do lots of work in tutorial about food on a budget, because it's a big cost and you can't get away from spending money on food. Avoid overspending in transport. Set out a student bank account. We've also done banking and borrowing, paying for accommodation termly, and planning that weekly budget and spend. So if students could go to university and know how much they're likely to need to budget for weekly, that is really helpful. So next steps. So our students are encouraged to register an account at gov.uk, Student Finance. And this is open now, and it's February to the end of May. And applying on time does make sure that when you start your course, you can get those payments. And it's one online digital application. So students should share any information with the universities, because that's how universities will get information to consider them automatically for things like bursaries. There will be an ID check, and you will need, as parents and carers, to disclose your income. And they just enter one of the 5 university choices. There's loads of really good information websites. Save the Student's got great pages on student finance. So research those costs of living. Many students haven't firmed up offers. Just have a little check on accommodation costs, and set up that student bank account. Have honest conversations about funding and household income. And just to note, household income includes parents' partners in the same household, but not parents who live at different addresses. So if you are a parent and a step parent in the same household, both your incomes will be taken into account. But if you are 2 parents at different addresses, it's just one parent whose income is taken into account. Bursaries and scholarships. Vicky has spoken about bursaries and scholarships, and I'm all for free money that students will claim. Just like BHASVIC, some of our students are on bursaries. We are given money by the government, so are universities. Please encourage your young person to claim a bursary if they are entitled to it. And there is a Welcome to UCAS Pathway SharePoint page for students, and the Scholarship Hub, and there's a couple of really good documents. There was a one recently shared by the Sixth Form College Association, which is on the widening participation, which lists all the bursaries for universities. There is bursaries for things like young carers, all sorts of things. So do check out and do the research on those bursaries. Accommodation. Universities will pressure sometimes to firm up and to book accommodation. Don't let that sway your young person in getting accommodation at a university that they don't actually want to go to. Just hold off and make sure that it's the right university. But they're very good at sort of keeping in touch. Mostly once you've firmed offer, they will give lots of information, and there are often applicant or offer holder days, and they're great opportunities to go and have a really good look in depth at the subject area, accommodation at a university, in a bit more detail than probably open days offer. The Parent and Carers booklet's got lots of information, actually, if you want to check that out, on things like contracts and any considerations on accommodation. Top tips for parents, carers sending students off to uni, cooking, and we've talked about that, having a few good meals they can cook cheaply. Laundry, do they know how to do laundry? Healthcare, and Vicky's talked about doctors, how to budget. Some really basic first aid is always useful. Things like, do they know how to unblock a toilet and change a light bulb? Some really kind of basic stuff that will help them. Security, parental contacts, and kind of how much do you want to talk to them? Checking in once a week, coming home, how often, that kind of thing. Just have those conversations. Results Day in August, we run a help desk throughout August. Last year we had about 300 students unplaced at uni. Many of them had withdrawn offers and decided not to go after all and apply in the gap year for something quite different. Please let us help. We do write to every student who has not got a uni place, who is registered for UCAS, and we do that via email. And please let us help, get in touch, and we're there for all of August. There's a team of us. Support for ex-students, and we will do some information for our current students for applying in their gap year. We kind of treat them like current students. So ex-students, there's a button and a UCAS page with all the resources we share with A2s. They will apply through BHASVIC and we'll update information. We can check personal statements, we check their application forms and their references, and really happy to chat and give advice, meet, Teams, phone, whatever's convenient for students and parents and carers if they want to come in on that as well. But we have lots of help for ex-students applying. Last but not least, it's just that offer of help. Really happy to answer any questions. We should have a few minutes to do so before the stream ends. And if anything more complex, please feel free to get in contact with me at he@basvic.ac.uk. But thanks so much for listening, and I hope it's been useful. Apologies again for the audio at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. I'm going to bring Vicky in as well. So we do have a couple of questions that have come through. So we're going to go out on a limb here, and we're going to have a crack at trying to answer some of those. So there's a few questions that probably will apply to a few people, and I think you've probably picked this one up. So this question here was regarding ex-students. If they go on a gap year and wanting to apply via UCAS, does BHASVIC still provide references?
We do, yeah. I look after ex-students, Jemima. So, and it's a real pleasure to do so because they are a wonderful cohort of students to work with. And yes, we still provide references, and we give students a chance to update their reference as well. We work with them on their application, so it's done alongside us.
Okay, great. And there's a few questions in about choices. So this question here, someone came a bit late, but I thought the question was quite important for everybody, just about just to clarify about narrowing down to two choices so soon. Can you just clarify on when that was meant to happen?
Universities should reply by May the 16th. Whatever happens, students don't have to reply until, I think it's June the 9th. I never remember the date. It's something like June the 6th, I think. Certainly on the PowerPoint, but they have plenty of time to really think about their choices. So lots of time to do it.
It will also appear on UCAS track to say you need to reply to your offers. But just to clarify what Nikki said earlier, that once you've made those two choices, all other offers disappear. So do take that time that she mentioned to do it right and think.
Great. And as Nikki said, there is a whole Alison's helpfully provided this, and we'll make sure these links are all in the description, but there is a dedicated page for ex-students and various others about kind of applying there, and we'll make sure there's lots of links to things about information about deadlines and all that kind of stuff. But we now there's a bit of a troll here of some questions that relate to finance, which I know is always the one that probably is a bit worrying for parents, and there's kind of few myths and different things around it. Yeah. So Nikki, I think you kind of covered this a little bit, but just, if the students apply for finance at a certain uni and then go somewhere else, how does that work?
It kicks in when they enrol. The main thing is their application is in the system at Student Finance England. So when and lots of universities will do a kind of pre-enrolment online, and then when they physically enrol at university, provide ID, then the university will effectively apply for their student finance. Vicky, would you add anything on that?
Yeah, you can also contact Student Finance England once you've decided your main university. And but as Nikki said, nothing comes into place until you enrol, and then that's a direct conversation between the university and Student Finance England.
Great. And this question I know was covered, but I think it's another thing that's probably really worth clarifying. So about whether your young person has to fill in the household income, or does it get sent to parents? So just the clarity around that, because that does feel to some parents a little strange.
They do fill it in, but there is going to be a request for evidence, and that's usually on the previous tax year's P60. So you would need to supply evidence. So it's all done through the kind of tax system. So if there is a marked difference in your family income from the previous tax year, then you would go back to Student Finance England and query that, because obviously you could lose a job or something in between that. But they go on the previous tax year and look at your P60.
Yeah. And what happens is when a student signs up for student finance, they'll give parent, step parent, or whatever, their email addresses. So you'll get written to.
Brilliant. And I think this is an interesting question. It's got two parts to it, but pretty much. So is it the case that the more you earn, the quicker you pay back your loan, or do you pay more back the more you earn? So it's kind of really, how's the sort
of both, actually.
I couldn't answer the first. I think you'd have to be like a kind of tax and interest.
It's kind of both, though, really, because obviously, yeah, if you're earning lots of money really early out of university, then you are going to pay your loan off quicker because you are paying back more. However, if you are in that bracket where you earn more money and you are paying back more, but you won't pay all of it, because you will get to the end of it's 40 years now, isn't it, Nikki? You get to the end of those 40 years where some of it would have been wiped, then essentially you are paying more back than somebody who earns less. I hope so. Yeah, complicated, but a bit of both, actually. It depends where you sit in terms of income and how much you earn over those 40 years and how quickly you earn those higher salaries.
And I think it's worth saying, I think, like Nikki, you said, that if you listen to some of the Martin Lewis things, it's kind of very much his advice. Really think about it like a kind of no win, no fee. So if you do well out of university, you will pay more up front as after when you start earning, but you've done well out of university, so that's great. But we'll make sure we can get some links to Martin's content as well in the description, because it is really helpful for parents just to mystify some of that. There's a couple of questions in here I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer, the things around whether trust funds affect student loans or anything like that.
I think just really Student Finance England are your go-to for those kind of personal inquiries, because those are going to be so niche responses that actually you can always contact them directly and they will kind of unpick those personal situations for you.
Yeah, great. And similarly, there's a question here about kind of universal income, whether that stops once the student moves out. I think that's kind of probably reach out to the appropriate kind of people to find out about that.
Yeah. Somebody, I think it's Carol, was asked about clearing is the only option if pupils do not get the required grades for both of the two options. It may well be. Clearing's a bit of a lottery, but plenty of students will just take a gap year and apply again in the autumn with their grades. Some retake subjects, to retake exams the next year, but just taking the time, and we can talk things through with students.
And we're there on the help desk to support in those circumstances as well. So contact the college at those times as well.
Great. And this is when we will find there'll be more and more of those personalised questions that come up. So just reach out to the college at he@basvic.ac.uk, and there is the wonderful team to help out. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your forbearance and patience with our a little technical hitch, but we got there in the end, and we're bang on 7 o'clock. So thank you for joining us. And any questions, send an email. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.